extremely grateful. We're really happy that you're here. It's an honor to be here with you, to speak with you. We're going to try and cover roughly 3 hours worth, I think, of content in 1 hour. So we're going to move kind of quickly, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But by way of introduction, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Stephen Klein, and I teach at the University of California, Berkeley. I teach a bunch of different things. I teach undergraduate and graduate students. I teach AI strategy. I teach AI ethics. I teach marketing, and I teach entrepreneurship, and I love it. It's my passion. I'm founder and CEO of Curiouser AI, which I believe is an extraordinarily wonderful, wonderful company building the right kind of AI, the kind of AI that will ultimately create jobs and elevate humanity. When I'm not doing this, I'm part of the Harvard Leadership Council here in the Bay Area. We've got about 400 alumni here, and we form small consulting teams, usually 5 to 7 people, and we work with nonprofits pro bono across the United States. And I'm also in the process of writing a book with Georgetown Publishing, and it's called, at least the working title is called, Age of Meaning, Age of Meaning, which is a vision that I have, that we have for what happens in a post-automation world, and it's a very optimistic vision. So that's a little bit about me. Today's topic, why you do what you do matters more than what you do. And that may sound obvious, but trust me, it's not. Our goal is to think deeply about what a company needs to stand for to be successful. When you really, really look at the origins of successful companies, you'll always, if you dig deep enough, find a relatively spiritual entrepreneur who was operating at a deeper level than most people operate. You can call it the level of the why, the value, the purpose. It goes by lots of names. But most people don't realize that. And when you start understanding it, you start seeing it. Okay, I don't know about you, but there are times where I say, what's the point? What's the point? Why am I here? Seriously. Like, what's going on here in this universe? And there may be more than one answer to that. And that may be spiritual for many, that may be religious for many. But let's spend 5 minutes, and I'm going to show you what I think the point might be.
Bill Gates Sr. literally changed my life.
And had no reason to do so.
No, I had
either.
no reason to do it. And the founders of Starbucks Coffee Company, specifically Jerry Baldwin, 2 years before had acquired Peet's Coffee Company. So Starbucks had 6 stores, Peet's had 5 or 6, and it was a tough economic time. And Jerry bought Peet's with mostly debt. And it turns out that Starbucks and Peet's got into financial trouble. And Jerry came to me and said, I decided that I'm going to sell Starbucks and I'm going to keep Peet's and I'm going to move to the Bay Area. And it seems to me if you could raise the money, you're the right guy to acquire Starbucks. So that was great news to me, but I had no money. And at that time I had left Starbucks and formed my own coffee company called Il Giornale, and we were doing pretty well, but I had no money to buy Starbucks. The purchase price was $3.8 million in 1987. And so the good news is the opportunity, bad news, no money. So I went to my existing investors, to try and raise the $3.8 million. And Jerry said, if you can raise the money in 60, 90 days, it's yours. But at the same time, just to cover myself, I'm going to start talking to other people in case you can't raise the money.
Which would have been horrible for you.
Yeah, terrible. And he came to me with about 30 days in and said, how are you doing? And I said, I've raised about a third of the money, and I'm confident I'm going to raise the rest. But I wasn't confident. I didn't know where the money was coming. Well, maybe a week or two later, he calls me up and says, can you come see me? And I go to see Jerry, and he says, I got some bad news. I've got an all-cash offer, all cash, with no due diligence to buy the company. And Howard, I just got to take it. And I said, from who? And he said, one of your investors. And it turned out that one of our investors had gone around me and tried to steal the opportunity. And I tell you, I was just heartbroken. I couldn't believe it. The guy who was intending to do this was a titan in Seattle at the time. He's here, and I'm down here. I would have no access to him. I was in a basketball league at the time, and I'm telling my friend Scott Greenberg the story. He's a lawyer, a young lawyer at Bill Gates Sr.'s law firm. And he says to me, this is a terrible thing. You got to come in the office and tell Bill Gates the story. You have to. I said, I don't even know Bill. He said, you come in. So next day, he got a meeting with me, and I went in there with Scott, Bill Gates Sr., who at the time was like 6'7", 6'8". He was a titan of Seattle. He was just the man. Now, Bill Gates, Microsoft at the time, was a small startup company. No one knew Bill Gates, but everyone knew Bill Gates Sr. I walk in the office, I tell him the whole story, and he says, I'm just going to ask you two straight up questions. I was so nervous. I was so anxious.
I was going to say, the nerves had to be through the roof.
Awful. Yeah, I was sweating. I said,
my hands are sweating just listening to this.
He says, is everything you told me true? I said, Mr. Gates, 100% the truth. Have you left anything out? I said, no. And he says, we're going to take a walk. I don't know where we're going. We take a walk across the street, literally. We go up to the top floor, and then I realize we're walking into the other man's office, whose name should be not mentioned. We walk in. Bill Gates is 6'7", 6'8". This guy is behind his desk, and Bill Gates stands over him, just like this, walks in and said, I'm going to walk out of this office, and you are going to stand down, and Howard Schultz and Starbucks Coffee are going to never hear from you again. Are we clear? I'm just like, holy. And the guy kind of wilts and says, I understand. And we walk out. And I just said, Mr. Gates, what just happened? And he said, you're going to own Starbucks Coffee Company, and my son and I are going to help you. And they did. And we bought the company for $3.8 million. Now, Bill Gates Sr. never told a soul what he did for me. And at every opportunity I had throughout the years, I'd find an opportunity to thank him. And he just never he just shrugged it off.
That is the point. When you can do that for people. When you only do it because you can do it. And no one needs to know you did it. You just did it. Clayton Christensen, an extraordinary man. He died several years ago. He was a mentor of mine. Kindness may be the fundamental why we're here. The only metrics that truly matter in life are the ones you will use to measure yourself at the end. And I've concluded that the most important one is how well you have helped people become better people. And I know I'm kind of looking at, I'd kind of call this a bit of spirituality. And And I think we need more of it in business, quite frankly, because I think it helps build business. But so many principles that we live our lives by, or at least try to live our lives by, are hard to measure, right? They're hard to measure. You know, they're posters on a wall or whatever, dumb videos HR pushes out, no one believes anyways, right? But this simple rule, you know, how many people can you help be better people per day? Turn it into a ratio. How many people per day? You can measure how many people per day did you help be better people? And if you actually follow that principle, it leads to some extraordinary places. Because think about it. You're helping people that are around you. You're helping them. They're helping you. Could be people inside your company. Could be colleagues. Could be friends. Customers. Imagine the attitude of helping customers be better people. So I'd argue that successful entrepreneurship is complex, but at its very core always lies a deep and inherent sense of meaning and purpose. It has to, because it is so damn hard building a company. You get punched in the face and kicked in the gut daily. There's no avoiding it. I don't care who you are. And if you don't have that sense of meaning and purpose, there's just no way you're going to keep going. Because it makes no sense to keep going unless you've got that. So I think entrepreneurship is essentially a philosophical act. I think you can learn it, learn the rest. But that's the part that you've got to really kind of understand at a fairly profound and deep level. Call it strategic spirituality. In the Western world, I think we mock spirituality to some extent. I think because the management consultants took over and the MBAs run the world, right? The Ivy League MBAs. It's really quantitative. It's oriented toward data. It's all left brain, not much right brain left in the world. But at the end of the day, it matters. Mark Twain said the two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. I think that there are oftentimes many whys in our life, but building a company can certainly be a contender for that if you believe in what you're doing. But there's lots of whys. Steve Jobs said, your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you do find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So keep looking until you find it. Don't settle. Settling's the enemy. If there is an enemy, that's it. It's not fear. It's not failure. It's settling. Now, if you are building something in this world, whether it's a company, a product, a life, a family, a relationship, you're not doing it in isolation. And a lot of people, I think, don't factor in the context, the environmental situational analysis that we all function within. I think we take a lot of it for granted. And now Well, what I'm about to share with you may seem a little bit dark and negative, but it's data and it's inherently factual, and it's important because you can't separate what you're doing from the world in which you're doing it. And this is the opportunity for all of us to do our best to be the light. Reality, mental health, loneliness and isolation are now recognized as a public health crisis, with health risks equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Okay, so there is a chronic epidemic of loneliness in the United States. I don't know about, I'm not going to speak for other parts of the world, I don't. But in the United States, not only do I know this from a factual and quantitative basis from research, but I know this from a lot of data that I derive, firsthand primary data. The Viktor Frankl Institute, 85% of people said they are searching for purpose. 15% say they live it. Is this stunning? That only 23% of employees globally are engaged at work. And the reason they're not is because they don't believe in the purpose. They're just mercenaries. They're just going in for a paycheck and trying to get out as soon as they can and can't wait for the weekend to come around. But isn't that stunning? And you know what? That's 2023. So now it's 2025, I believe. Am I correct? Yeah, I think it's 2025. We're right about at August. Do you think that number, 23%, is higher now or lower now than it was in 2023? I wish we could interact on this call. I think it's significantly lower. I don't know how significantly lower, but I think with the advent of the whole AI bit, I think people are being disrespected. Larger companies are treating them worse than they were treating them. I think they're commoditizing people. They're basically communicating the message essentially that, you can be replaced by AI. And in fact, we're going to be cutting a lot of people and we're going to replace them with AI. When in reality, that's not even true. People aren't getting replaced with AI. That's a myth that the industry is driving. I just think that is a really fundamental problem. And that's why building great companies and hiring people is so important, or at least trying. Half of Gen Zs and almost half of millennials feel anxious or stressed almost all of the time. Again, that was 2023. I think Gen Zs face a particular challenge. And part of why, we founded Curious or AI is specifically to do our best to use AI to create jobs, because it's just as easy to create them as it is to replace them. In fact, I think it's easier. I just think you got to look at the ROI on a little bit more of a longer term basis. It requires investment and belief in the future versus extracting money in the short term. But that's a topic for another day. Half of CEOs believe that their company will not be viable in 10 years without radical transformation. Korn Ferry did a study about, I don't know, it was a few months ago, specifically around Gen AI and Gen AI implementation and so forth. And they talked like, I don't know how many, I should know, but like, I don't know, 700, 1,000. It was a statistically significant sample on a quantitative basis. So it's fairly reliable, and it was prescriptive. And what it basically indicated was roughly 80% of CEOs today, 2025, believe that they moved too quickly and made some pretty significant mistakes when it comes to generative AI. And about the same percentage felt that their jobs were in jeopardy and that they would potentially be replaced in 1 to 2 years. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and it all relates back to the same thing: purpose and the why. Do you see the thread here? 63% of people say businesses are failing to live up to values. 52% say brands are purpose watching. So even the brands that, you know, talk about their why, their purpose, people sense that it's not, you know, authentic, that it's just more spin. Because you know what? It probably is, right? And you can actually measure purpose. And if you do basically dig deep and find that purpose for your organization, and you communicate that and you believe it on an authentic level, you're going to actually make more money. How's that for a concept? Monetizing purpose. That's kind of cool, right? Peter Drucker, arguably the most famous consultant of all time, kind of invented management consulting. There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. We spend a majority of our business lives optimizing things that should probably not have existed in the first place because we didn't start in the right place. We didn't start with purpose. So we're A/B testing garbage and incrementally improving it. I think I'm hammering this point home, huh? With enough data. Don't take my word for it, right? So purpose isn't a tagline. It isn't a pitch deck. It isn't a charity initiative to try and, you know, paint yourself altruistic. It's the reason you exist. It's what breaks your heart. It's what lights you up. It's the change you're committed to making, and it's the sacrifice you're willing to make. Because that's what authenticity is, right? So we live our entire lives in the what's and the hows, and the wheres and the whens. But the why, that's really, really hard. We tend to avoid the why. And most people don't ever even confront it. The vast majority of people at the end of their lives realize how important that why was and how they kind of missed it. Okay, this is a very famous video. It's, I think, maybe the #1 most popular video on TED, for TED Talk, Simon Sinek. But this is sort of, I think, honestly, a pretty good articulation of the application of why to a business. Okay, let's connect the dots now. This is an edited version of it. You can see the full version on TED, but this is a few minutes of the video. Okay, it's important.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, How do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet, they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered manned flight was like the .com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers' team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich, and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight.
So I think the message is coming through loud and clear, and there are many, many examples. And if you start looking at some of the larger companies today, you'll notice that they're managed by professional managers, right? You know, they started, somebody, founder, an entrepreneur, started every one of them, right? Every single company, regardless of its size, was started by, 1 or 2 or 3 people. But I think you'll notice that a lot of these larger companies have kind of, I don't know what the purpose of some of them are. So let's just have some fun for a minute. Apple, I think we all know that, and Sinek, went through that, but Apple's always been in the nonconformity business. Apple's always been in the business of giving people permission to rebel, to rage against the machine. In a lot of ways, it's similar to Harley Davidson. I could build an argument, I could build a course on the commonality between Harley Davidson and Apple, because they're both, in a sense, setting people free to be original and to stand apart and not have to conform to a preconceived mold. Nike, sneakers, no. Aspiration, right? Dreams, the ability to fly, right? That's what that company was built on. Everybody's desire to fly, everybody's desire to be great, to honor greatness, to honor great athletes. Starbucks, coffee. The world did not need another coffee company. And I think earlier on in this seminar, you could see the passion Howard Schultz had. Like, it was really personal. It was really, really personal to him. I mean, really serious for him. But what business was Starbucks really in? They're in the community business. They were the first ones to encourage people to come into the store and sit and stay. They were the first ones. Many of you may be too young to remember, but the status quo at that point was to get people in and out as fast as you could. You did not want somebody loitering in your restaurant or your cafe. You did not want that because you looked at that as you were losing money. You looked at it as an assembly line. People in, people out, people in, people out. Efficiency, process, factory. That was the MBA model for virtually all of the restaurants and cafes. And he said, yeah, I've got an idea. Let's do the opposite. Let's encourage people to stay. That was crazy. Are you an idiot? How are you going to make money? How are you going to make money? But he provided that what would be known as sort of the third place, right? Where you could gather. You could, up until then, it was like you could either get together in your house or at work. Now we don't even have getting together at work really because of so many people working from home, but he established that third place where you could get together. FedEx. There's a great story. Fred Smith. By the way, you do know, have you heard the story that he could make payroll in the beginning? The company was done. So many of these companies were done more than once. Netflix, so many of them were bankrupt more than once. It's just, these guys just don't quit. But he literally took all the money that he had, I think it was $15,000, and he went to Las Vegas. He played blackjack. True story. And he made enough money to go back and make payroll and keep the company going. But that's not the point here. The point here is, what business is FedEx in, right? When they started the company, it was sort of, we're just going to be a faster post office, right? We're just going to get mail from A to B faster. That's our what we're going to do. What we're going to do is get mail from A to B faster than the United States Post Office. That's what we're going to do. How we're going to do it is they analyzed infrastructure and distribution, and they came up with ways to do that. That was the how. But the why really puzzled Fred Smith, the CEO. He was really, really perplexed. And so he hired, big agencies, and he had major, marketing executives around him. And they just kept coming up with kind of garbage. And one day he was walking around the company and he was hanging out with the receptionist. If you want to know what's going on in a business, you talk to the receptionist, okay? Because he or she is the one actually talking to real people. And he asked her, how's it going? And she said, people really, they get really, really worried that that their mail's not going to get there. And he realized that he was in the certainty business. Peace of mind. FedEx is in the peace of mind business. I don't know if you realize that. But when you have an option to mail something, that is usually the option that gives you the highest probability it'll get there. Certainty is a big, big deal to people. We don't like uncertainty. Humanity does not like uncertainty. It is very, very uncomfortable. We'd rather fake, pretend futures that we assume are certain and pretend they're certain than deal with uncertainty. Taylor Swift. I teach a bunch of classes about Taylor Swift. As an entrepreneur, you can learn so much from her, about how to build $1 billion business. This is what she did. She's built $1 billion business. And there's all kinds of lessons. But what essentially did she do? What essentially did she bring to the world that as an entrepreneur, as an entertainer, made her what she is? It was vulnerability. If you go back to her original work, she had the courage to actually be vulnerable. She just basically put down all of her shields and all of her protection, and she just stood up there on stage and stood up there wherever she was, and she just basically told her stories very, very, very honestly, and she was vulnerable, and the audience related to that and realized that, geez, she's kind of like I am. I feel the same way, but I'm too afraid to share that. She's in the vulnerability business. Beyonce, the courage to produce a Western piece of music is extraordinary. She's extraordinary. So purpose isn't noble, it's necessary. And it's necessary across the entire journey. Everything starts. Everything. Family, relationship, company, product always starts as an idea. Which is why generative AI is going to have a very, very difficult time replacing people. But again, that's another topic. Every idea starts in the imagination of an individual. And if it wants to pop out of that imagination, if it wants to come out of your mind, how are you going to introduce it to the world? You need a story. And this is where purpose and why. This is where it all happens, right? Because who's going to give a shit about your story if it doesn't have the power of purpose? And then you attract resources, right? People, money, you build an organization, and your why and your purpose are still part of the culture there, right? If you go back to all of these companies in the beginning, they really had serious cultures, and then you produce a product, impact. Most people don't lack purpose. They lack the courage to pursue it. I think a lot of us actually know what our purpose might be and what it could be, but it does take a lot of courage to pursue it, because then you get exposed. You're afraid you can, embarrass yourself, whatever. Abraham Wald, World War II. The British and the Allies were flying missions over Germany, and the planes were getting shot down. Pilots were getting killed. This was the beginning of flight. Okay, these planes were practically made of paper. Prop. Okay, this was 30s. And so the Americans and the British brought together the greatest minds that they could find, because this was serious shit, right? This is World War II. You're fighting World War II here. I mean, this is not a drill. And they brought together the greatest minds, and they put them in a secret offsite. in the UK. And their goal was to figure out how to make the planes safer so that fewer of them would get shot down. And it was, to a large extent, mathematics, because when the planes would come back in and the pilots would come back in, they'd be measuring all of the bullet holes. These were the planes that didn't get shot down, obviously. So they would analyze the planes very, very carefully. Now, they couldn't put a lot of armor on these planes because armor was heavy and the planes wouldn't get off the ground. So they had to put very, very, very small amounts of armor from an engineering perspective. And so they did all of their scatter, analysis, and they all agreed, there was consensus that this is where we're going to put the armor, like here and here, here and here, maybe. And Abraham Wald stood up and said, "You're all wrong. You all got it wrong. You all got it the opposite of what it is." And he had the courage to stand up, can you imagine, and tell everybody they were full of shit. And what he said is, he said, we're looking at the planes that are coming back. These guys made it. That's not the issue. What about the guys that didn't come back? Where are their bullet holes? And he won the argument. And they put armor on the places that didn't have bullet holes. And he saved lives. Think different. Think different. Have courage. And he saved lives. Abraham Wald. So a brand isn't just your why made visible. It's a story that has meaning. Brand is reputation. It's how you communicate who you are. That's all it is. Another marketing term for it. But the way I define a brand is, how do people talk about you when you're not around to hear it, right? Curious or AI, our company. I don't know what people are going to say when I'm not around to hear it. Like, even if they do even talk about us, which probably don't, because we're little and early. But if they do, what would they say? That is the brand. Socrates invented the original why loop. The unexamined life is not worth living. That is probably one of the most important statements ever articulated. But it's not just the unexamined life, it's the unexamined business. The answer always lies within. Don't have time to go through the Socratic method because we want to take questions. I've got 9 minutes left. Question everything, people. I wrote a satire on LinkedIn a while back. And the satire was a press release announcement that Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, had built the Egyptian pyramids. Okay, now that's kind of ridiculous, right? That Sam Altman actually built the Egyptian pyramids. And I explained how he did it. He actually created a GPT AGI. The GPT AGI created a time machine. He went back into time with his time machine. Then he realized he couldn't lift the rocks because they weigh, a lot. So his AGI created a quantum computer. Then the quantum computer created a way to create an anti-gravity machine, and he was able to build the pyramids with, one hand. People believed me. People were upset with me that I didn't say it was a satire. I mean, come on. Question everything. Don't be cynical, but be skeptical. the Toyota 5 Whys, the simplest algorithm in the world. Just ask why over and over again. Steve Jobs and Apple, why does anybody need your computers? Well, because they're really beautiful and they're easy to use. Why does anybody care that a computer is easy and, beautiful and easy to use? Well, because that way more people can have computers. Why do more people want computers? Why do more people need computers? Don't stop there. Well, because people want to do more things. Why do people want to do more things? People want to do more things because they want to express themselves. They want to rebel. They want to be creative. They want to make a difference. Boom. Avoid chasing hype. Never retire, never burn out, and never fake it. Questions? Are there any questions? Hi, Maori. Introduce yourself, Maori.
Hello, I'm Miri. I'm co-founder and chief strategy officer. So good to see you guys. It's been quiet. Everyone's been engaged but quiet. So I think people should just come off camera and ask questions. So does anybody want to go first?
We should have planted questions.
I don't know. Let me go first then.
Hey, Eric, thank you.
Hey. So,
Hey.
why do you think there's such a lack of purpose-driven organizations? I mean, it feels like there used to be more of that, and today there's so little of it.
It's the $1 million question, isn't it? $1 billion, $1 trillion question. I don't know, but I think that people, in terms of the power, the people who have the power over the larger companies right now are thinking more short term and they're extracting value. So, for example, here's a data point that, since 1980, half of all the value and profit produced by the S&P 500 was based on layoffs and stock buybacks. So I think it's easier right now I think basically when you tie compensation, when a CEO's compensation is tied to the share price, which is really what it is now in the Fortune 500, right? They're all basically compensated based on improving the stock price. The theory is that way everybody wins, right? The shareholders all win and they own the company, right? But the problem with that is that if you don't look at it over a longer duration and you just look at over short term, what are the fastest ways to improve the share price and make money and put it in your pocket if you're CEO? What are the fastest ways? Cut people, cut costs, instantly your share price goes up, or buy your stock back, right? Diminish supply, so demand goes up, price goes up. So I think the problem is the fact that people are compensated based on short-term outcomes, and that produces less risk. I think that may be one of the key. And then the Wall Street and the way they drive quarterly earnings and reports, we're going quarter to quarter. We're not thinking longer term. We're not investing in the future. I think that's why the larger companies, I don't think, are going to save the world. I think it's going to have to be companies that are being built now that we haven't heard of yet. Google, the next Google, the next Microsoft. So that would be my answer as best as I don't.
I'll just make a comment, Stephen,
Yeah.
that I think that it's really a huge opportunity to disrupt any industry. Because if being a purpose-driven organization makes you better, as it does, the data tells you it does, you can disrupt these companies that are focused on whatever they're focused on, something else, right? Where their employees have no engagement, where they don't give everything, their everything every day, right? You build a company that does that, you're going to beat them, even if your product's no better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And imagine this, and this is what's going to happen. I'm an optimist, by the way. I probably want to say that. I believe in many of these companies. I believe in Apple. I believe in Tim Cook. I kind of have faith. I think Google's going to figure it out. What I believe is that at some point with AI, a company, a CEO is going to say, you know what? I got an idea. We're going to use AI not to replace people, but to level up our workers and to elevate our organization. And we're going to build a platform infrastructure and ecosystem that's going to actually basically be operated based on values and ethics. And we're going to create a culture based on values and ethics. We're going to operationalize it through AI. And our customers are going to appreciate it. Our workers are going to appreciate it. Imagine that CEO now. That CEO now is attracting the highest quality workers. And customers are going to be appreciative of it. And so I think that we're going to see leaders step up and realize that if they zig in a zag world or zag in a zig world, there's going to be competitive advantage. I think that's going to happen ultimately. So yeah, I agree with you, Eric, but you can either disrupt them and or they can pivot and win.
Can I add to that?
Yeah. Hey, hi, Caroline.
Hi,
Carolina. Hi.
Carolina.
Carolina, it's nice to meet you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you too. I loved your LinkedIn post when I see them. So that's how I met you. Anyhow,
Thank you.
No, thank you. So rounding up what you just said, that's exactly what I have created my purpose. That's my why, leveling up human capital. Now, one of the things that and here I'm just a little person with a big why, with a big purpose. And I'm an optimist as well as you are. But one of the things that I'm seeing as a bottleneck is that the economic system does not see the value of that. So we have enough data points. We can go all the way back to Socrates. We can go all the way back to history. And we all know that having a clear purpose is not something from Simon Sinek to now. It's always been the clear history as you presented today. But the economic system is not molding to it. And there is companies like Anthropic. I don't know if it's truly what they're trying to do, like your company, like what you're trying to teach, that basically is trying to change that economic system of having the value of purpose. What's your take on that?
I think that there is an opportunity for values-based companies. And I think we're entering a new world. I think generative AI is transformative, and I do think it's going to turn things upside down. And I do think there's going to be two camps. And I think one camp is going to be the camp that is sort of looking at it as an automation tool, an efficiency tool, process optimization, industrial age, which is what's happening now, what the management consultants are driving. And then there's going to be a group of people like us. I think Mira Murati is probably going to be in this camp. I think Apple is going to be in this camp, that realize that they can turn things around and use it to basically make us better and improve people. So people are buying our product right now. You know, and we're charging $25 a month versus $20. We're charging a little bit more, and it's still early days. It's an MVP. It's not anywhere near as great as it's going to be. But people are buying it and using it, and it is purpose-driven. It is values-based. It does slow you down. It does ask you questions. And so I think we're going to be successful. I think you're going to, I do believe that you can combine purpose, values, and you can have a goal of being a capitalist and making a lot of money both. I think they go hand in hand. And that's what we're, I'm a capitalist. You know, I went to Harvard. I went to the Pentagon of capitalism. I want to make a boatload of money for my team, and we want to make a crap load of money for the investors and the team. I think we can do it, and we can do it based on purpose. So I don't know, Carolina. I think it's very doable and very possible. And then when you start getting some traction, investors will understand that they can make money doing it. And as long as people realize they can make money being purpose-driven, you're going to see the money starts flowing in. And it's all up to the market, right? It's all up to the market. It's what the market wants ultimately. The market gets to vote. The customers get to vote. So I do think that there's opportunity here, big time. Maybe now more than ever, actually, as paradoxical as that might seem.
Thank you.
And you can be one small person. You can get them everything was one small person. Yeah, I mean, everything starts that way, right? Purpose is powerful. People are attracted to it, and you can grow that way. And I also think that sorry for rambling on, but I also think that there's this incredible desire right now on the part of the overall marketplace to find that purpose and find that authenticity and to do business with companies like that. I believe that. And I think that, ultimately, if I had to put Anthropic up against, say, OpenAI, and I know I'm really into AI, but if I had to put Anthropic up against OpenAI, all things being equal, Anthropic's going to win, because at least there's some alignment there, right, around ethics. At least there's some. With OpenAI, there's none. November 2023, they got rid of every ethics person in the company. They're all gone. What more evidence do you need? So, yeah, I believe you can do it. Any one of us can do it if we just work hard enough and work crazy enough. Anybody else? We're running over time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's schedule. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask or
I'd like
say?
to add something there,
Yeah.
Stephen.
Hey, yes, sir, Matthew, my friend.
How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Done a few interesting things today. What I found ironic, I've probably been the most vociferous about OpenAI getting rid of their ethics teams in 2023. I know you've dovetailed a lot into that.
I follow you religiously, and I know that absolutely.
But few people are afraid to discuss it on LinkedIn, because who owns LinkedIn?
Microsoft.
And I had to laugh today and chuckle today. I've done a third I haven't been posting for 2 months for lots of different reasons. But I put up the one about the EU AI Act that's come out. And I chuckle to myself when I see that OpenAI says they're going to sign up to the EU AI Act, and say in the same breath that Meta is not going to sign up to it. So it's all theater and play of, you're right, Carolina, and we're not there yet for consultants in ethics, because with the present administration in America, they'll laugh at anybody who wants to bring ethics into the boardroom, because they've got rid of most of us who want to do anything like that. However, there is hope now in Europe, and I'm fully going down that rabbit hole now, and I fully intend to follow it through, because we have governments now who are giving us something concrete to work with. Before, you could have been studying for God knows how long, and the data would have been outdated within weeks. But now we've got something concrete, and it's going to go live in the next couple of days. But I just wanted to add to that point. It's so frustrating on LinkedIn when you have 1 billion professional people all scared to talk about the hard questions. Who or why would any company sack their ethics team? And you get very little.
I'm not scared, and you're not scared.
I'm not scared.
I'm not scared.
But we get silenced if we don't put up these. A dog falling down a hole, or a fucking elephant running around, and
I don't know.
It's all this bullshit that is.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I talk to a lot of people, Matthew, a lot of influencers that have hundreds of thousands of followers, and what's happening with my algorithm, I analyze this, what's happening with my algorithm around impressions and followers and so forth is identical to what's happening to all of them. I don't think they're singling out. I don't believe that the data would suggest they're singling somebody like me out because of my point of view, at least not yet.
At least
and I
that,
don't-
yeah.
Yeah.
And people are getting sick. People are waking up to these million following people with
Oh,
people are waking up now on LinkedIn, and
there's
the
a lot of
truth is coming
inside
home.
money on that. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are paid by the industry to toe the industry line and to push the narrative, and they don't disclose it. That is one of my pet peeves. But and that's what the sugar industry did. That's what tobacco did. There's a lot of that, right? But the truth always comes out. It always does. We know cigarettes are bad for you. We know sugar's not good for you. The truth comes out. It does. It always does. Have faith.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm in it for the long haul. I
Yeah.
don't panic as much as I used to 2 years ago. And I'm like, why are people not seeing the obvious? You kind of have to take a deep breath and say, look, society will begin to emerge. There are more people getting it. You know, if Jeffrey Hinton can't get his warning out to people, God help the rest of us. But, you know, eventually society will wake up, but something really bad is going to have to happen first, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, they're demonizing Hinton after he left Google because of his stance. The industry is demonizing him at this point and ridiculing him. But here's the thing. Okay, so you've got Tim Cook at Apple. I'll bring Apple up again, right? Think about it. I mean, what is the one mega tech company that is basically sitting out the entire AI gold rush? Apple. They're sitting it out, right? They're not involved, and he's being ridiculed. What's the one big tech company that didn't have any layoffs? Apple.
Yeah.
What's the one big tech company that has $160 billion in cash? Apple.
They're waiting for the subprime AI.
Yeah, I mean,
crash.
I think that's the cavalry. I think that's the grown-ups, and I think that's where the grown-ups are going to show up at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that guy Linus. You know that guy Linus who keeps pushing the narrative all the way. He keeps asking.
Oh my God.
He keeps asking, where is Apple in all of this? Where is that? I said, maybe they're playing cleverer than anybody.
Well, no, because the inside of if you're inside, you're ridiculing Tim Cook, just like you're ridiculing Jeffrey. It's like if you don't basically buy the narrative in its entirety, then you're somebody that needs to be demonized. But there are a lot of people like me, for example. I think there's a lot of people like me who love AI, who believe in AI. AI's Maori and me and this is our life. Okay, it's our work, right? We believe in it. So you can be really kind of critical of the business and the way it's operating without essentially being critical of the technology, because the technology doesn't have ethics. Right?
Nothing wrong with AI.
Nothing wrong with AI.
Nothing wrong with AI. An awful lot wrong with human stupidity and greed. That's what we're challenging.
But that
will change eventually.
It has to, and it'll change for two reasons. One, it's the right thing, but two, it's the way people are going to make money. Apple's going to make a lot of money. They're going to put Socrates in everybody's pocket. That's what Steve Jobs wanted to do. He's on the record of wanting to do that. 30 years ago, he dreamed about putting Socrates in people's pockets. That was he said that, right? And
you make me laugh. I'm deep into Socrates at the minute.
Yeah. So maybe I'm being delusional. Maybe I'm being Pollyanna. Maybe I'm too optimistic. Maybe I did too many drugs back in college. But this is what I believe will be, and I believe this is where it will go. And I'm again optimistic.
It'll go beyond Socrates, but I don't want to get into that with you at the moment. We'll do that another time. Sorry, I've taken up enough time.
No. Anything else? Anyone else have any comments or questions or constructive criticism? Compliments. Ooh, boy, do we love compliments. We don't like criticism as much as compliments.
I'm gonna give you compliments and everybody else here for showing up. And I'm not looking for brownie points, but I think I wrote back to you a while ago that it was a breath of fresh air. And hearing to you, listening to the two of you talking, it was also a breath of fresh air, because the reason I want to give compliments is keep talking. keep talking, because then more of us that, I wouldn't say as much as you will say, Matt, human stupidity. We're sticky. We're sticky. Humans, we're sticky. We don't like change. We're allergic to change, right? And I think that's why Stephen chose last week to speak to us about courage. And, you know, let's just keep bringing that courage to other people. I think it's infectious if we bring it. And let's just bring that positive side. And I want to say thank you to you guys for bringing that in, for showing up. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you. No, there's a lot of people out there that get it more and more and more, and it'll shift. The tide will change. You watch. It'll hit a tipping point. The market will likely crash. Certainly correct. It has to. There's no way it can't correct. There's no way. It's like gravity. It has to. What goes up has to come down when there's nothing keeping it up anymore. So anyways, keep the faith, keep working hard, build things, create things. Okay. We good?
We are. Thank you, everybody, and we'll
Thank
see
you
you
so
next
much.
week. Please show up
We
next
hope we
week.
do.
We really appreciate it. We love having you here. Thank you.
It's our way of giving back. Okay, thank you. Cheers. Mary?
Yes, I will end the call now because it's being recorded. And thank you, team.
Thank you.
Curiouser team
Thanks,
as well.
everybody.